Hey, welcome to another episode of Breaking the Glass Ceiling. This is your host, Kofi Thompson here. And I'm pretty excited for our guest today. We have Louis Masensi. And if you guys don't know Louis, he is a serial tech entrepreneur and the author of the book, Dynamic Man. And I actually got a chance to dive into it and read it before our show today and highly recommend you guys, get a copy and check it out for yourselves. Louis is the founder of Dreamcatch Development Software Agency, and he leads a team of talented software engineers in creating custom websites, web applications, and mobile applications for their clients. As a self-described expert on masculinity, Louis authored a book to give men a framework to tap into their masculinity in order to improve themselves and the world around them. Louis also helps men and women navigate struggles they encounter within their relationships. Beyond that, Louis is married and has two children whom he spends most of his time with. Welcome to the show, Louis.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, brother. So, just kind of like starting off, what motivated you to start educating men on helping them find their roles in the evolving world that we live in today?
That's a great question, man. And the honest answer is I found myself in the group that where we met, so the standard, right? So the way I got there was just really purely by accident, right? So one of my friends was actually used to manage Hafiz back in the day, and he invited me to a show out in Atlanta. Hey, why don't you come out and see, just hang out, see what we do. Go to the show, see Hafiz, and then after a bit, he talks, and Hafiz, I'm going to explain here for those who don't know who he is, but he talks on stage and there's a pause. Gentleman gets off stage and he talks about a suit. And I'm like, oh, I want a suit. So I go talk to him, buy a suit, and then a week or two later, I get a call and it's Hafiz. Hey, join this group. I made the standard. So the guy I was talking to was Joseph Hines, right? So he's
Mhm.
selling suits. Yep. I bought the suit, and then with the suit, I got a membership to get into the standard. And I got into the standard. There are a lot of great guys, different areas of life, right? So I'm 32 now, but I was 30 when I got to join the standard, which is just a men's group, right? So when I joined the group, there was a lot of guys I was talking to that were way further in life than I was. They had kids, married, good, beautiful, and there were guys that are also just coming up right out of college, maybe right out of high school, even. And as I was talking to the younger guys, I felt like, wow, man, we're talking about some really deep topics here, like relationships, marriage, but I'm like, we're kind of missing the point of like what you need to do even in the beginning before you're able to tackle life as a man. So I'm like, you know what? Instead of repeating myself over and over, I'm going to write a book so that I can help the guys in the group that are younger coming up kind of just have a framework to how on how to think about masculinity. So
Mm.
that was really, honestly speaking, that's why I wrote the book, right? It's because of the group. Or otherwise, I would have never written that book.
Man, we get inspiration from many different things in life. So it's really great work. And you even in the book, you give some context to like different about four different age-based classifications for how men develop. And I think in the world we live in today, it's oftentimes you know difficult to know like where we stand in our manhood. So like I love for you to kind of just like go through those four base age classifications because I really think it illuminates the stages that men and boys develop into becoming men as they continue to grow up.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So course you're born, you're a baby boy, right? You're a baby boy. That means you rely on someone else 100% to survive, right? So you're a boy as a baby. If your mother or your father or someone else is not there to feed you for 3 days, you won't be here anymore. Like, right? You just need someone all the time. So then after a while, you get to be about 4 or 5 years old. You can use a bathroom on your own, feed yourself. You're a young boy, right? You can get around, you can survive on your own, and that's good and that's great. But once you hit puberty, you become a boy. Like you've hit puberty and then you have strength. You're about 16 years old. That's when you're on the threshold of becoming an adult, right? You're from like 13 to 17. Your strength is increased. You grow up, you're tall, you're bigger. You're a boy at that point. But now, once you get to being an adult, you're not necessarily a man, right? Because to me, being a man is more of like a skill set and things that you do in combination with the age group than just the age group, right? So once you get to being 18, for me, if you don't have the requirements to be considered a man in my book, you're a guy, right? You're a guy, and it's okay. And there's nothing wrong with being a guy, but then over 18, if you have the requirements that I described in the book that would make you a man, that's when you can become a man. Before that, you're a guy and you're on your way to becoming a man. And it may take some time. You may have reached that at 18, maybe 17, 20, 19, 40, 50. It doesn't matter. But, it's not something that happens automatically.
Yeah, it's not just about, age. It's not the fact that you've
Mhm.
grown a beard, that, truly makes you a man. So we're going to be diving into some of those qualities. But I think one point that I want to, take a look at really quick is, nowadays a lot of men are very misguided and, aren't taking responsibility for what they should be. And there are also a lot of women out there that now have the ability to protect and provide. So in this now evolving world, like, it's common for men to sometimes even question, like, why do they exist? So what do you believe a man's duty should be in the world that we live in today?
Yeah, that's a thanks for asking. And that's pretty much the core thesis of the book, right? So it's like, well, if a woman can provide, if a woman can do most of the things I can do, then what is my role? And before I even say what I believe a man's duty is, I wanted to take a very just realistic and logical approach. I didn't want to just go look at a book, see what somebody else said. I wanted to go step by step, right? So what's really fixed is femininity. Femininity
Mhm.
is fixed across species, okay? And it does not change. Okay. If you go to most species that are some are asexual, even asexual species are actually female. They're not male. There's no male species
Mhm.
that can self-reproduce. No, that doesn't exist. They're all female. So there's sharks. There are sharks that can reproduce with male and female population, or they could do it on their own, and only the females can do it on their own, right? So I wanted to look at the basis of what is fixed, and that's the ability to reproduce. Women can do that. Men typically, typically, men cannot do that ever, right? So people who are born male cannot do that. If you have XY chromosome, you cannot reproduce. So then, having said that, female can reproduce, that means that that's something that they have final responsibility for across the board at any point in time, right? So they've always had the responsibility of reproducing and then also nurturing children, young children. So then I guess what is the role of a man in that scenario? It's pretty much everything else, right? So if a woman's able to reproduce and men can't reproduce, then a man has to make sure that he's able to remove any problems that a woman and a child might have to continue the lineage and just life in general. So a man's role, regardless of whether you're in Afghanistan, if
Mhm.
you're in America, in the hood, in the suburbs, your role is to have final responsibility for problem solving, because that is a unique role that you can claim to be in balance with women. Since they have a unique role they don't need to claim, it's given to them, right? So that is what I believe a man's duty is. Now, it looks different over time, but if you go back even to the Bible, even if you look at the ancient Greek history, and like it's all the same things. And, back in the day, it may be, well, King David is King Solomon is deciding between, there's two women walking up to them saying, "Hey, this is my baby. Oh no, this is my baby," and he has responsibility to solve that problem as a king, as a man there too, right? So as today, you may not be in a scenario where you have to go fight in a war, but if you're in a relationship with a woman, you still have final responsibility to solve problems. And it may not just be, hey, find something to eat, go fight for me. It could be
Mhm.
emotional problems, right? It could be psychological problems. You're still the person that's supposed to step in and say, hey, if things don't get done, I will instill certain pressure on myself to make sure that things don't completely crumble.
Mhm.
You become the last line of defense. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love the way you explain that too, because to me, it really ties into like also being a leader as well too. It's so important, like, yeah, things may happen within your family or things may happen within your business or your workplace. And I feel like for a lot of guys out there, like, sometimes it could be for many reasons. Maybe they were coddled a bit as they were growing up, but they tend to like deflect responsibility onto, another person or deflect responsibility. And it's so important to be able you don't necessarily have to take like ownership of the problem. Like, hey, like you may not have created the problem, but figure out solutions and ways to that you can solve it, because that allows you to really, again, like navigate different things in your life. And when you start taking ownership for a lot of things in your life, you'll find that like you are going to gain more confidence in your own ability, to direct your life in the ways that you would want to direct them as well too. So I love the way that you dive into that. And you also like kind of highlight the differences between manhood and masculinity, which I think is such like an important thing to understand the differences between the two. So how would you like please, yeah, explain or elaborate how you explained the differences between masculinity and manhood?
No, thank you. This is extremely important. And there were a few different subjects that really, really almost made my brain explode because trying to understand that. And manhood, masculinity was definitely one of them, right? So I always combine the two. I'm like, manhood, masculinity are kind of one and the same until I really thought about it deeply, right? So you and me, you're wearing a suit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have facial hair. And because you have facial hair, we can assume that you're likely male, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's your appearance. Okay. Anybody can walk up, a woman could walk up and wear a suit and put on fake facial hair, and we would assume that she's probably a man. We don't know, right? If she puts on makeup, that's because masculinity, right? There's masculinity is also taking into account appearance. Manhood is just about your qualities, right? Manhood is, like I said, when you get to being like an adult male, like over 18, if you have the five primary qualities, you can be considered a man because you can remove problems. Masculinity is actually a combination of your qualities and then your appearance. Because there are men,
Mm-hmm.
okay, there are people who have reached manhood, they don't look like men, right? Dennis Rodman is the best example I can think of. Dennis Rodman is a bad man, right? So if you think about Dennis Rodman, there's no one's gonna be like, oh, well, oh, you know what? I'm gonna mess with him, but look at him. He's wearing a dress. He's got makeup on, right? So he has feminine appearance, but you cannot take away the fact that he's a man that would go to war, fight you, and do the manliest things, because that's what manhood is about. It's the qualities that goes beyond the appearance. When you talk about masculinity in general, that's when things get fuzzy because it's a combination of both qualities and appearance. So a masculine man is someone that looks like you, right? You come off like a man, right? So you have the qualities and you have the appearance. But there are also feminine men. They may have the qualities but lack the appearance. And then lastly, we have masculine passing people. Those
Mm.
are people who put on, like I said, like a woman could put on the things to look like a man, but she's if she doesn't have the qualities, and she could never be really. I don't want to get into semantics, whatever, what have you. What I'm trying to say is, she doesn't have the masculine qualities. You can't be considered if a 16-year-old. That's a better use case. A guy's 15 and he's a scrawny little kid, but he puts on a muscle suit, fake hair, beard, everything, a suit, and then
Yeah.
he walks to you. Yeah, he's masculine passing. He looks like a man, but if he doesn't have the qualities to remove problems, he's not really a masculine man. He's pretending
Mm-hmm.
to be, right? So those are the three archetypes. And if you want to be a masculine man, like we all say, a lot of people want to be that, and there's nothing wrong with that. You want to have a combination of masculine qualities and masculine appearance. One or the other leaves you in those other categories.
Yeah, thank you for elaborating on that. So, we hear this thrown around so often, right? There's a masculinity crisis, going on. And, I do feel that like in some ways, like we're addicted to negative things where there's always a crisis. There's always, something going on in the world, right? Even when, things are going well. So do you
Mhm.
feel like there truly is a masculinity crisis going on? And if so, like what do you feel like could be, causing it?
Yeah, there. So in my opinion, there is somewhat of a masculinity crisis, but I want to narrow that focus, which to your
Hmm.
point, the difference between manhood and masculinity, right? So in reading the book, and I'm sure you came across that also, right, is what I mentioned about manhood versus masculinity. If you Candace Owens, great lady. I'm not saying anything bad about her, but when there was a guy, Harry Styles, the pop
Hmm.
singer, right? He wore a dress or he wore some sort of a skirt, and she went on about this is the crisis. This is what's wrong with men. This is why they're she said him wearing a dress made him like not a strong man, right? So like this is the decline of masculinity. And at first, at a glance, like, yeah, that makes sense. But when you think about it, when you look at guys like Dennis Rodman, you're like, well, I guess why does that make sense? And so, like, you want to look a little deeper. It's not so much that it's the appearance side that's in crisis. Yeah, even if guys are wearing dresses, if if Floyd Mayweather walks into a boxing gym wearing a dress, I'm not fighting Floyd Mayweather.
Facts.
I don't care. Like, bro, like, what are you talking about, man? I'm not, listen, the dress don't mean a thing. It's the qualities. I know he's strong. I know he's resourceful. I know I know he's gonna put hands on me. So I'm gonna back off, right? I'm gonna back away because he could just change the dress. You cannot change your qualities, right? So the real crisis is a manhood crisis, is the qualities. We are not instilling qualities into the youth and each other. And the reason that is because we don't have rites of passage. So becoming a woman is almost an innate rite of passage. And I left this out of the book because I wanted to have these conversations offline. So women in Liberia, women in America, Siberia, wherever, they have the same experience, the menstrual cycle, and it's something they have to get over every month, something that reminds them of their identity, of who they are in respect to us men. Like it's what makes them separate and different than us, right? So that is an innate rite of passage, right? Almost. It's something that you have to overcome all the time. So, men, back in the day, if you were born in ancient Rome, and this is what I learned during my studies for the book, before you could become a man, right? If you're 16, 17, what they made you do is they told you go into the night and go kill a few slaves and then come back here and then we'll call you a man, right?
Mhm.
And that was what you had to do. And a slave, you're 17, a slave could be a 40-year-old warrior that they captured. It's not just anybody, right?
Yeah.
But right, so they're like, go do that. The reason they did that is not because they're insane, is because the realities of that time called for that. There may be at any point
Hmm.
somebody may break into our city, and it could be a 40-year-old man trying to kill us. If you want to be considered one of us and stand guard and have final responsibility to solve problems for the group, you must show us that you're capable, that you have the qualities, the strength, the resourcefulness, the mental toughness to go into the night and do something so horrendous. But that is a rite of passage that men had back in the day. Now, we don't have those anymore. If you're in Africa, like I said, in Kenya, you'd have to kill a lion because lions used to creep in and kill their cattle. So, like, hey, before you can be considered a man, please go ahead and kill this lion. It's not because we want to kill lions, it's because it's a reality of our life. Now, when things started to get a little bit more easy for us as a species, the Industrial Revolution, the Civil Rights Movement, things got a little better for almost everybody. We kind of just relaxed and removed the man-made pressure. So we don't have a rite of passage. Guys have no point. There's no point where a guy goes in modern society, oh, well, because I did this, I'm a man. You kind of have to figure it out on your own. So the crisis that we have today is because boys do not have a straightforward path to becoming men, right? It's a manhood crisis that is enforced by the removal of the rite of passage from our societies. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, because nowadays, again, there isn't any actual rite of passage in order to becoming a man. So it becomes very confusing for people. Again, they're okay, am I a man when I have a beard? Like, am I a man when I
Mhm.
get a job and I can now pay my bills? But you really talk about, how there are these qualities of this dynamic man that every, man out there should seek to develop. So I'd love for you to like just illuminate what those qualities are for our listeners to understand and know, because I found those qualities to be just so, I mean, they're so important in order to like, understand how to make sure that you are showing up in with masculinity and as a man in the world today. So yeah, please illuminate on those five qualities you talked about in the book.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. And this is more of the timeless factor, right? So for me, in order to be considered a man, you need these qualities. And
Mm-hmm.
so and this is, if you pay attention, if you go look at a man today in Albania, in America, in Asia, wherever, these are the qualities that I found anyways to be consistent across men and across time. If any respected guy is typically going to embody some of these qualities, a version of these, right? So and the reason is, of course, it's just it helps you have final responsibility to solve problems. And the first one is strength. It's physical
Mm-hmm.
strength. And the reason this is the most important one is because that is the innate quality that we have over women. Okay, men are, I forget how many percentage, but we're significantly stronger and bigger than women. Okay, so that is the one thing that we know for sure. Other people can say we're more courageous. I don't know if that's true, but we know for sure that we're bigger and stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, if you're bigger and stronger than someone else, you're probably the person that should be taking on that responsibility, right? If you're faster, you're probably the person that should be running to go get help. If there's, you know what I mean? It's just, that's
Mm-hmm.
what that means, right? So strength is the first one. Second is, I alluded to, is courage. You can be strong, right? You can have. I remember one of my boys got into this scuffle with this other guy. This guy was 6'3" and he was very muscular. And my boy was dating this girl. Okay, he's dating this girl, and they broke up. And then this new muscular big guy started dating my boy's ex-girlfriend. And my boy was really not over it, and he kept texting her, and he just had enough of it. Everyone around the city that knew us was like, "Hey man, your friend is about to get beat up by this big guy, man." And then one day they ran into each other at the gym, and I wasn't there. But then the next day, everybody was calling me, telling me how my friend, who's shorter than me, Pudgy, beat up this guy that's huge and muscular. And it was like, what happened, right? So being strong, having the capacity for strength is not enough. You also must have the courage to actually activate it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
courage is the second quality. Now, if you're strong and you're courageous, then you have to be mentally tough, because if you're strong and you're courageous, you go on doing a task, whatever it is. If you don't have the mental toughness or the capacity to keep going and not stop, you're not the person that needs to have final responsibility, because you
Mm-hmm.
will crumble and not fulfill your duty. Next is resourcefulness, the ability to continue to have the initiative to find new solutions. So a lot of times with guys, what I've seen is they get into situations where they lose control and they forget that, hey, it's okay to lose control for a second, but my duty here is to find solutions. Like, right, there's the case I brought up about the woman who's driving back home at night after she drove an hour to a concert, and it's thunderstorming. They get in a flat tire, and then she has to change the tire. This is someone I know personally. She actually just talked to her today. She had to change the tire because her boyfriend is just sitting on the phone, because he's like, okay, well, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, she didn't know how, but she had to look it up, right? So being resourceful helps you get out of these situations. Like, okay, you're always thinking about, how can I solve this problem? And then lastly is dependability. Dependability is being reliable, knowing that you can engage these four qualities in the service of others. That's what makes you, because even if you have all those four qualities, but you decide to go live in a remote mountain and you have your children and you just leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter that you have them. You might as well not have them, because you're not dependable. So those are the five qualities to be a man. And of course, like you said, there's an additional one to be a dynamic. There's some additional ones, but that's the base.
Yeah, no, I love those so much, and especially the dependability because I find that that one, especially the society we live in today that like really focuses on like the individual, being self-made, like, focusing on like, just yourself and almost like ignoring your community and the people that are around you, can be really hard sometimes for people to grasp. And, I remember I, had read the, Four Agreements. That's like something, this was maybe 6, 7 years ago when I first like picked up that book. And, one of the things that I loved, one of the agreements that I truly loved was being impeccable with your word, which I think is so critically important because when you are living up to that value, you realize that, when you say things, when you make different promises, like it doesn't depend on how you feel at the end of the day when you make that promise. Oh, I told this person I was going to pick them up from the airport, but I'm just not feeling too good. So maybe I'm going to tell them I'm going to cancel. If you say something, it's so important to live by your words and live by your truth and show up as being dependable because, it only takes a certain amount of interactions for someone to realize you're not reliable. And then you've now formed that reputation. And like I always say, it takes 5 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to destroy it. And you also, I realized that for me, in my journey, being an entrepreneur, having different opportunities, like a lot of times I may not have had all the skills that I needed to maybe get a job in the past or, even, taking on a client, but I was dependable. If I made promises and I kept them. And I think again, that's like such an important quality to have. You don't have to again know every skill. You don't have to always, know the right answer. But if you can at least, live up to the things you're saying and people can realize that you're going to be someone that is always going to show up no matter how you feel at the end of the day. Again, that's just such an important quality, not just for yourself, but for the people that you're in relationship with, down the road as well too. So I especially
1,000%. No, I couldn't agree more, man. It's yeah, absolutely. And I want to ask you, what kind of what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm a financial planner. So I own a investment management and advanced life insurance practice. So I
Mhm.
help people out with retirement planning, helping them reduce taxes, and dependability is extremely important. And because I'm always making promises to my clients and telling them,
Yeah.
hey, these are things that we're going to be working on. So if I'm not actually showing up with the results and making sure I'm on time to meetings, making sure I'm put together plans for them, when I tell them I'm going to be putting together plans, that whole relationship is destroyed. So, a lot of these qualities are extremely important in the work that I do and the relationships I build.
For sure, man. And how long you been doing it?
2019 is when I started actually. So I was working for a very large firm. I became one of the top advisors there and then started my own company last
Yeah.
year.
Well, congratulations. That's a big deal. It is, man.
I
Entrepreneurship
appreciate
is
it.
not easy.
No, it is not. And you talk about, courage and mental toughness. You got to have a lot of that if you're going to go on this journey.
Every day. Every day.
Man, so another thing that you really dived into was, how important emotional intelligence is for, a dynamic man. I believe that this is an area that, you know, because of how men in the past have been raised can often be an area that a lot of people struggle with. We've been told to, oftentimes ignore our emotions, not be in touch with them. We oftentimes will look at people, James Bond or like, great figures like that. And like these guys are just, very cool. They're, never really expressing themselves, but you really highlight the importance of emotional intelligence. So, why do you think this is an important quality and how can, developing emotional intelligence help you in your intimate and business relationships?
Yeah, man. This is, and I feel like, yeah. So I guess I'll say this, right? So what I've described so far is more of a traditional man, right? So if you have those five qualities, strengths, so on and so forth, you can kind of survive. Those are survival qualities, and that's what you're gonna see repeat over and over and over. And I bet if you go to a poorer country, the men there will have higher degrees of these qualities that I mentioned because
Hmm.
they're more in survival mode, right? Even in America, if you go to Beverly Hills versus if you go to the hood, you're gonna find some tougher people in the hood than in Beverly Hills because they're in survival mode and these people aren't, right? So what happened over the last couple of hundred years is the entire world, except very few people, like the leaders, the kings, and the presidents, very few people lived outside of survival. Most people were in complete survival mode almost all the time, right? So with that, you really didn't when you're in survival mode, you don't really have time to care about your feelings or emotions as much as when you're kind of sitting down and eating and you don't have anything to do. When you're just want to live, all you care about is, hey, how do I stay alive? And which blinds you from you put your feelings aside. So what I believe has happened over the last couple of hundred years is we collectively, at least Western societies, we've escaped Maslow's hierarchy of needs from being just at the survival level to more of the psychological and self-fulfillment levels, right? So
Hmm.
at that point, it's like if you're a man, if you have final responsibility for problem solving, it's no longer survival problem. It's not just like, hey, I'm going to provide and fight for my wife. Yeah, you can do all those things, but if you're in a relationship with a woman and she's being vulnerable with you, because women are scientifically proven to be more emotionally expressive. They may not feel emotions more. That's not been proven, but they're more emotionally expressive. And you're in a relationship with a woman and she's opening up to you and you don't have the skills to understand the words that she's saying or emotion words. First of all, it's going to fall on deaf ears, and then over time she's going to leave you, point blank period. If she's a woman who values herself and how she feels, she's going to leave you. So at this point, it's not so much that a man has to go out and hunt and get the food. It's more of, hey, we can share our responsibilities for living and providing. We can share those things, but it's also psychologically self-fulfillment. How are you making sure that she's provided for at that level
Hmm.
emotionally? So if you're not able to do both of those things, the survival qualities and then the emotional ability, you're kind of just falling short. And lastly, in business, it's really important. It's like it's important in every area of life, but in business, people people don't work with people they don't really like. Like it's and being likable is just a matter of having social skills and understanding social cues,
Yeah.
right? That's all it is, right? So knowing when to say the right thing, what not to say, knowing when you've offended somebody because you can see their emotional reaction and
Hmm.
having the say, hey, this is how I apologize for them to see that, hey, we should be business partners, right? So having
Hmm.
the ability to really navigate that aspect gives you more leverage in business and relationships, and I mean, all aspects, really.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for diving into that. I mean, even today I had an interaction like I was taking on a new client, and we kind of went through, our first couple like meetings, and they started to, get a little concerned because it's their first time investing. So there's, man, like I don't really, know if this is the right thing. They want to like, do more research, but I really took this approach was like, okay, like let me, address some of the fears they have instead of
Yeah.
like, going through and like attacking them and saying, oh, all these whatever things that people might do. I addressed some of the fears they have, and I was like, hey, like would it be helpful if I went through an educational session so you can understand more about how we work here and the things we do. And so taking that approach really opened them up to really being able to learn more, and it allowed us to meet, and now we're going to start working together. And I think that's such an important approach because like a lot of times when you may like face conflict, if you're not able to recognize your own emotions, it's really hard to recognize other people's emotions
Yeah.
first off. But then when you're able to do that, you can really approach different topics or any points of conflict in a way that's more disarming for people and is not going to pull up their guards, which is, again, just so important, whether it be in intimate relationships or business. And I oftentimes find that when people have conflicts, one thing I truly believe is that I believe that all conflicts come from either miscommunication or lack of communication at the end of the day.
Mm.
But when you have the emotional intelligence to, really meet people where they're at and not come to them as an advocate instead of the adversary, it really
Mm.
allows you to form and create such better and stronger, relationships in the long term.
No, I totally agree. And I want to ask you, how did you figure this out?
So for me, I grew up in a household where there really was not a lot of, emotional intelligence. Unfortunately, like part of it was due to my parents. They suffered from mental illnesses. So my dad had bipolar, my mom was schizophrenic. So like growing up in this household, I really didn't learn about various types of tools. I didn't really, I wasn't in a place where there was a lot of emotional transparency. It was very volatile growing up for me. So for years, I really just, again, didn't really express my feelings very much. Never really knew how to communicate, how I felt in a healthy way. And then when I was around 21, I had a pretty big jarring experience. I actually got jumped and had my jaw broken.
Oh
Unfortunately,
man.
that was a pretty big life-changing event for me. So before then, again, I was not doing anything that was conducive to a good life for me. But that event actually changed so much for me because it really gave me a moment to look at my life currently and how it was. And I realized that, if I continue to go down this path, I'm not going to get anywhere that I really want to be. And so I started to think about what type of person do I want to be? Like, how do I want to show up in the world? And so that gave me the motivation to start, being able to look at other people. I remember the first book I picked up was Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. So that book started me on this journey of just self learning. Like I started picking up more books. TD Jakes, I forgot the name of the book. Gosh, the name has escaped me. But he has a great book that talks about being emotional as a man, how to express your emotions. So I started to really just do a lot of work, reading books, listening to podcasts, and after hearing how other men that had healed through the experiences they had in life, how they express themselves. I just saw another way of living. So I started, if it wasn't quick, but I started to, slowly be more vulnerable with intimate partners, slowly be more vulnerable with, my brother and like family members. And I just really started to see the benefits of it. And once you kind of know, you're like, wow, like this is such a better way to live when I'm able to actually be on the same page with people instead of having to try to guess what their emotions are, have them try to guess what my emotions are. Just being able to clearly communicate was so beneficial. And then, I also obviously became a financial advisor. Being an advisor, you have to be a leader for your clients. So, and I was in leadership positions at my firms. All these different experiences really pushed me to learn these things, so I could be a better person for myself and the people around me.
Would you say that? I mean, that's an amazing story, man. Would you say then that emotional intelligence has played a key role in the success that you've seen in life so far?
It has played a critical role in the success that I've seen in life. I truly feel without the emotional intelligence, I highly doubt I would have been able to form the relationships that I did in
Mm,
life. And I very greatly doubt that like I even would have been successful as a financial advisor. Especially in a role like this, it's so important to be able to empathize with people, being able to understand what emotions people are feeling because I see it oftentimes in many other careers, many other positions. You have to be able to really understand where people are at in order to take them to a different place. And like people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you
mm.
don't have emotional intelligence, you aren't able to relate to them and express those things. It's so hard to actually convey that at the end of the day. So I mean, I've found that it's been one of the most important pieces. At the end of the day, more than the knowledge even that I hold, just understanding people and understanding myself and emotions.
100%. For me too, man. And the reason I call the book The Dynamic Man is because I found myself in pretty like some sticky situations, right? I found myself in situations where people threatened to beat me up several times, right? People like scary people. But yes, I was ready to fight because again, that's what happens when you're a person living in the world. You never know when danger is going to, where it's going to come from, when it's going to. So that's why I harp on, hey, these qualities will make you survive. Being strong, understanding, and you grow other qualities like situational awareness, so on and so forth. But also just being able to relate to people, like I've been able to de-escalate, like if
Mhm.
like knowing, yo, like throwing a punch here will get me, this guy is bigger than me, maybe there's a
Yeah.
word I can use by looking at, like, feeling, knowing how they feel, trying to understand, like you said, like relating it to myself. Wait, what is the best sentence to say now to maybe get him to calm down a little bit more, right? So, and that applies to when you walk down the street, like you said, that applies to when you're at the grocery store, when you're working with people. And that's why I feel like I totally agree. Knowledge is great, but for me, getting along with people is the number one skill that everybody should have. And a lot of it starts with emotional intelligence.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's like, I mean, I can't stress how important that is because, especially pointing out to, like, knowledge is important, skills are important, but if you're not able to relate to people, they will never take the time to understand, what you truly know or what you can, do at the end of the day. It's, we absolutely live in a different time. And if you don't have those skills, like, you will find yourself running into so many more conflicts and so many more obstacles at the end of the day. So I want to switch gears a little bit here. So we've identified, a lot of key points of being a masculine man. And so I'd like to dive into, dating for men out there. So, at this point, let's say that, a man has um, developed all these qualities in themselves. And they're now, showing up as a dynamic man. Um, I believe that in today's society, so many men have also grown up with so many like mixed messages from like social media, so many messages from like, Disney movies and all these things. So what do you feel like common misconceptions guys typically have when it comes to dating and women?
Man, I could write a book on this. Maybe that's the next one. Uh, and I want to talk about the Disney movie one, right? If you have you seen some Disney movies?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. So the biggest misconception, and this is from both sides, me too. Okay. The biggest misconception is the nice guy misconception.
Mm.
Okay. You look at Disney movies. I watched Sleeping Beauty recently. I believe, yeah, Sleeping Beauty. Okay. And I went back and watched what Prince Charming was actually like. This guy is not a nice guy. This guy is a killer, right? This guy is quite literally, he kills a dragon at the end. He fights minions. So the idea that women like nice guys because he's nice to the to Sleeping Beauty in the movie is a misconception. He's a dynamic man. He's able to be nice when he needs to be. He also is able to be a killer when he needs to be. And we only focus on the niceness and we become 100% of a nice guy and forget about the other skills that we need, right? So a big misconception is women say they like nice guys, but they really don't. They like the bad boys. That's not true. Women don't. A healthy woman doesn't like a bad boy. A bad boy typically succeeds with women because he has a lot of the masculine qualities that nice guys don't have. He's typically stronger, courageous. He's more resourceful, right? So he's more upfront about things, charismatic, right? And those are the things that women are attracted to. Women like these things because they signal masculinity, right? So the manhood qualities. So if you're a guy and you're like, well, women don't like nice guys just because I'm a nice guy. No, it's because you're also pretty soft where you shouldn't be soft, right? Because you can't be 100% soft as a guy because there's things that happen to all of us. People die. You go broke. If you're not ready, because you have to be there for your family. If a woman can sense that, hey, this guy is so nice that he's completely soft and I cannot depend on him during hard times, that's not attractive, right? So it's not that women like bad boys. Women just don't want to be with guys that are not fully there. And nice guys are not fully there. Nice guys also don't know how to trigger attraction. They'll go on a date and talk to women very nicely. And that's not, bro, that's not it, man. Like you do, that's your friend. You're gonna get friend zoned, right? So what you want to do is talk nicely, but then you have to be smooth, right? You talked about James Bond. This is the only scenario. Always ask yourself, what would James Bond do when you're on a date with a woman? Would James Bond act like a pushover? Probably not. Would he be dependable to her? Would he be charming? Probably. He does that so he can build sexual rapport and attraction. So it's understood this is a romantic relationship that I want to take it, right? You do that by flirting. So if you're missing that component when you're out on a date, yeah, that's going to be a bad thing. And if you get dumped, that's probably why. At the same time, there is something to say where I guess I'll stop there. Please, I want to
Yeah, yeah,
see if
yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I think it's so there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to especially being a nice guy. Like we have, especially for a lot of guys that only have female role models growing up, a lot of times they don't lack a lot of those masculine qualities of being disagreeable. For they may be way too agreeable, they may agree to every single thing. They're not direct, they don't really express their feelings in a very direct way. Like they again, like they may lack the courage to um do certain things. Like maybe like even they may, oh man, if I open the door I may feel like I'm a weak guy. Like just being yourself and being authentic, like it's so important to show up confidently and have those masculine qualities, because like if you don't, as you said, you just come off as someone that is very passive, and that's not very attractive, because that's not, at the end of the day, like a lot of the things that we find attraction to have evolved millions of years ago, right?
that's right.
And so like for a woman, she doesn't want a guy that is going to run away in the face of a battle.
Mhm.
Like she doesn't want a guy that is going to cower at the first bit of distress. She doesn't want a guy that she's going to have to coddle when, something goes wrong in the business or they're having a little bit of financial trouble. She wants someone that is going to, again, take that final responsibility and take that lead. And, it's picked up in a lot of those subtle things that you do, especially in those initial interactions that you have. Um,
Absolutely. I love that you said that. Absolutely. Perfect. Yep,
yeah.
exactly.
So for guys out there, what are some qualities that you feel that they like? Because a lot of guys feel like, man, like, man, I'm not 6 feet. I don't make six figures. I don't look like I should be on the cover of Men's Magazine. I guess I have no chance, right?
Yeah.
So that's how a lot of guys, feel out there. But the reality is that's not the case. So what do you feel are some qualities that, guys do have the ability to work on that's within their control that can really, make them more attractive in the dating space?
Yeah, man, thank you. And then a lot of this is scientifically proven, so it's not just my opinion. A lot of
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
stuff that, yeah, so it's like, first of all, this being charming is the number one thing anybody can do. If you're charming, it doesn't matter what you look like. Being charming, though, is complicated. You can be
Hmm.
the most charming man in the world, but have no way of explaining what it is. So
Yeah.
I'll try to explain it. Okay. Being charming is how people perceive you through their senses, right? So how people see you, smell you, how people feel you, so what that means, I'm going to elaborate further. How you move, how you sound, how you talk, all those things add up to being charming. So long as you do those things in a pleasant manner, people don't mind being around you.
Hmm.
Okay. So if you're awkward, excuse me, that makes other people feel awkward.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
internalize it like, oh crap. And it's not that they don't like you. They're like, I don't want to feel awkward myself. Like, I want to get
Hmm.
away from this. And then people don't marry people they're trying to get away from, right? So it just doesn't
Yeah.
happen. Right? So if you look like you're uncomfortable and nervous and trying to talk to a woman, she's like, well, like now what should I be nervous? Like what's
Mhm.
going, you see what I'm saying? Like it's
Yeah.
all these things. But having understanding, like, hey, the way I talk, slowing down, being smooth, how I move. Yeah, and you can practice on all those things. The first thing you should do, if you don't know how to move, start dancing. Start take some dancing lessons so you can be more comfortable moving in a smooth way, in a way that's pleasant to the eye, right? If you don't know how to talk, please go practice in front of a mirror or record yourself. See how you sound. See what's wrong with it, at least just objectively, or ask someone else and then work on it at home. You can work on all these things so you're just more pleasant to be around. You can be funnier, you can be dependable, like we said, but there's a whole lot of different things you can do to make yourself more attractive.
Yeah, man, I love that. And especially too, an important thing to realize is that people will take on your feelings, right? If you come
Yes.
into a space and you're extremely anxious, you're extremely nervous, that is going to be projected out, and people are generally going to also be nervous as well too.
Hmm.
You're kind of like shaking the way and you're talking and you approach someone, they're gonna, again, if you make it awkward, it's gonna be awkward at the end of the day. So it's so important to be very self-aware of how you're presenting yourself, because those feelings that you have internally, like they're going to be expressed, and that other person is going to take on that same energy. So like, yeah, be conscious of the way you approach people. And like, if you feel, again, like you're pretty nervous, what I've found is like exposure helps. So like, go out there and start just having
Yes.
conversations with people. Like, go out there, like it again, you may not do it right the first time, but do it 100 times. Go out there and don't like try to have like an end goal in mind, like especially when it comes to dating. Don't be like, man, like, okay, I gotta get this date, I gotta focus on the outcome. Just focus on like, can I make this person smile? Can I just have a nice interaction with them? And just continue to do that, because when you do that, your brain's gonna realize like, wow, like, first, this isn't a mortal danger. I'm not gonna die
No.
from going out there and putting myself out there. And just, I find that like, confidence comes from your knowledge that that you can be like successful in a thing. So
That's
like,
it. Yeah.
if you don't have any experience in anything, that's pretty much just like arrogance. Like if I just came to I don't know, I went to a custom car building shop. I could build the best car here, but I've never taken one mechanic class. Yeah, that's gonna be arrogant. And I have to get some reps under my belt. So
Yeah.
you're gonna develop confidence from just doing the thing more often. So if that's an area that you're struggling with, go out there and do it. And again, don't focus on the outcome, just focus on the reps that you're doing. Because if let's say you make 100,000 cold calls, or you approach, 100 women, you are going to feel more confident at the end of that. That's just, it's a reality, at the end of the day. We've highlighted on some of the things that, can build attraction, but I think it's also important to highlight on some things that also kill attraction, because I find that it oftentimes, can be more often what we not what we say, or not what we don't say, but what we say, or not what we, don't do, but what we do, that can really kill attraction in building a relationship. So what do you, or maybe some common things you've seen that really can kill attraction, in the beginning of a relationship?
No, for sure, man. It's really tricky, right? So in the beginning, you don't want to be overwhelmingly vulnerable with a woman, right? Because it
Mm-hmm.
shows weakness, right? It shows like this guy is willing to be vulnerable with me, and it's everybody compares. She's gonna compare it to all the guys that she knows, and she's gonna be like, "Well, he has a deficiency somewhere." That means I'm probably going. If he's willing to be this vulnerable this early, he's gonna be even more vulnerable in 2 months, and then in 6 months, and I'm gonna turn to his mom,
Yeah.
right? So don't do that. Be be mindful. Please share. Be vulnerable with your boys. That's why we're here. Talk to us. Talk to a therapist, and then come to a woman and be vulnerable with her, but slowly, and also make sure that she knows that you're going to be okay, that she's not the only person there, right? So beyond that, there's going too soon, going for kisses really early, going for that makes you look like you're either a player, you're thirsty again, or that you're low status. You just don't get around women much. This is the golden opportunity. I got to jump on this. It makes you look bad. Don't do that. Wait at least I would say 2 dates, unless she's asking you for a kiss. Like quite literally, just wait for a few days before you try it. There's when you're in a relationship the like if a woman comes to you, she's like, "Hey, I had a crappy day. This person said this." If you go straight for, "Hey, this is a solution," that could be a problem, right? She may just want to
Mm-hmm.
vent. Try to understand, hey, is she trying to vent or does she want a solution? So don't rush to solutions. That could be a problem. When you do live with a woman, understand that you want to do as much as possible, because if she's just an average woman, she's going to be doing a lot. Women are just, they seem to be hardwired to just want everything to be done, or so if you're just slacking off playing video games all the time, you're going to become less attractive. We could do this for hours,
Yeah.
right? But those are a few that I can come up with right now.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you diving into that. So we've gone through a lot of these qualities that are attractive. And so I want to take it a step further. So, for guys, there's a lot of guys up, they form these different qualities to be attractive. If they're able to, approach women, they do a great job doing that. But then, they have a problem with retaining the women that they're attracting. So, there's different qualities that are necessary for that. So what do you feel, oftentimes, or what do you feel like are the qualities that it takes to retain a woman? And let's say there's a guy that again he's able to meet women, he's able to go out and talk to them, but then between the interaction of the first date, there's just a loss of attraction there, or between even the first date and the second date.
Mm.
What are the things that you feel are important for guys to keep in mind, to retain women? And again, I'll even throw this out there because there's a lot of gurus out there. Oh yeah, you gotta not text like until like 3 days after you meet them, and you gotta be very like cold and uh, everything in the beginning. So could you just illuminate this for the guys out there? Like, what is a healthy way to really make sure that you're retaining the women that enter into your life?
Yeah, man, for sure. Thanks for asking. And this is very tricky. I don't believe in any one size fits all thing. Somebody tells you you always have to wait 3 days. I mean, I can say they're wrong, right? Because some women might be like, well, this guy's not interested, or she might have 100 guys that are up every day. You waited 3 days, now you miss her 301, and she forgot about you. So it really just depends on the woman, right? So it's so if you're able to attract women and go on the first date, like between dates, just make sure that you maintain the frame or just the personality that got you the date, right? So if you went and talked to her and you were somewhat playful, be somewhat playful. Don't turn into a cold dude, right? Or don't turn into, if you're very cool, don't turn into just be consistent and don't be overbearing, right? Don't The whole thing with women, it's not about how to impress them. It's about how to, it's the opposite. As soon as a woman sees you, from my perspective, she's looking for reasons not to keep talking to you, right? That's why I tell people, go talk to a woman, be out of there as quickly as possible, unless you're really good at it, because you're going to say something or do something that's going to turn her off. And then, she gets approached all the time. So she's not like, this is special. So she's going to be like, I don't need this guy. So be quick with that. Now, when you're getting a date, after you get the phone number, make sure you text just enough. See how she texts, right? You see how she texts and text just a little under, right? So you want to make sure that if she texts a lot, don't just be cold because she might be like, well, this guy's not interested, or this guy just he's boring, right? Just text just as almost as much as she does, but just a little bit just to keep up with her. But you want to minimize that. You don't want to spend all day texting because you are likely to do or say something to turn her off. I don't know what that is, but you don't know her, right? So it's just better to keep that to a minimum, but to just keep up with her, but keep it to a minimum. And then on the date, you can figure out more of who she is. And then after second or third days, you can maybe text her a little bit more because you know her a bit better. You've built a rapport, so on and so forth. The thing now, once you get in the relationship, it's just like what makes you not able to maintain a relationship is just a lot of times your mental health. Like, where are you? How did your attachment styles? Are you insecure? Do you have jealousy issues? Are you able to, do you have patience? I used to have a terrible temper, right? I think I do a lot better now, right? So do you have patience to actually deal with the things that she comes to you with? Do you have the emotional intelligence skills to relate and to be able to empathize? Those are words that I didn't even know existed, right? So it's those things that the more of the emotional, psychological things that need to be handled. Because if you did the first part right, it's probably because you were masculine enough to attract her. Now, the second part is you have to be also emotionally available or aware enough to maintain her while keeping attraction on that masculine side, anyways. So it's a balance, man. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you for sharing that. And right now, this is especially a particular hard area for a lot of people. Given the Me Too movement and a lot of different things that have been coming up. But we often hear stories. For example, I most commonly I think of Bill Gates, and I'm not sure if you heard the story how he got in started dating Melinda Gates, but essentially he was like the owner of the company. I think she worked there as some type of maybe an assistant, but like essentially not, the owner of the company,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah, yeah.
And he ended up calling her because, thought she was really cool, asking her on a date. And she, man, like I got, work. So like I can't go on this date. And then he ends up calling her back and he's, hey, you're off for the rest of the day. Like, go out, right? So there's obviously, a good amount of, pursuing that he did, in order to court her, in order for them to build a relationship. And nowadays, again, I think it's hard for guys to determine, like, okay, should they like be pursuing women or should they be, not pursuing women? Again, with the Me Too, it's become really confusing. Do you feel guys should pursue women, and how should guys determine whether or not like a woman does want to be pursued or does not want to be pursued?
Yeah, man, and those are great questions, and I'd like to hear your take on it too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I believe that, for most women do want someone that to an extent is going to be a challenge, but also does show interest as well too. So I
Mhm.
believe it's important to really be aware of how she's interacting with you. For example, if I, walk up to someone um in a grocery store and I find them attractive and I start talking to them, I'm going to pick up very subtly like, whether or not she's interested in me or not. You can kind of look at signs, body language, like are they trying to exit the conversation or are they really enjoying, talking to you? Like are there inflections in their voice? Are they asking you questions as well too? Are they curious about you? I think that's a great way to understand if they do, find you attractive. If you ask them on a date and let's say they can't go on that day, are they suggesting
Mhm.
another date?
Mhm.
Or are they just plain out saying, oh man, I can't do this? So there, to me, there's little things that you have to notice as you're, and this is for any type of relationship that you're building. Like people will show you whether or not they, do like you or if they don't like you. And I think it's so important to, all right, if again, that person is not asking you questions, you're not curious, looking in like different directions as you're talking to them, that's probably a pretty good signal that that person's not interested in you. And you'll tell in the first 10, 30 seconds. And you should probably just, go on your merry way. Not every single person is going to be out there for you. And you're only going to lower your status more by trying to pursue someone like that. But if someone does show, interest in you, um, they may sometimes, again, like kind of just in the society we live in, they may play some type of games, but you're going to notice because they're going to be very responsive. Again, they're going to be curious about you. It's not just going to be like a one-sided conversation or interaction, in my opinion.
I mean, I agree. I don't know if there's really much more I can add. I mean, that's really quite literally what I would say. Also, my dog is happy. Yeah, so,
Yeah.
can you even hear him? Can you hear him? Okay.
Yeah, I heard him bark a little bit, but I think we're good. We're good. So one question before we dive into the last pieces here. So as a dynamic, high value, guy, what do you feel like are qualities that they should be looking into uh for a healthy woman to develop a long-term relationship? Because, again, like I feel we are often shown, especially on social media, oh, you want a girl to look like this, all these different things. And, a lot of times guys are, we're just naturally attracted. We're visual creatures. We're naturally attracted to women that look really great, but that may not always be the qualities that we truly need to seek, especially for someone that is extremely ambitious, is someone that's going on like a harder journey. Maybe they want to become an entrepreneur, a high level CEO, or just do great things. So what do you feel are qualities that a guy should be looking for um, after they've developed these qualities in themselves in a healthy partner as a woman or for, yeah.
Yeah. No, man, I think this is very important. I think first and foremost, the last thing you said is probably the most important thing when it comes to at least self-reflection. Like, who am I? What type of person am I? Am I an entrepreneur? If I'm an entrepreneur, is it a great idea to date someone who's a nine to fiver, right? Maybe it isn't. Maybe it is, right? But and if she's a nine to fiver, is she going to be okay? Will she have the patience to deal with me maybe working at from 6 to 9, even though she's off work, right? So it's just understanding who you are and like what's really core to you as a person, right? And then
Mhm.
seeing, well, does this person complement that? Okay, so if you're a person that's very emotionally intelligent, you probably need somebody that's emotionally mature, right? So
Yeah.
if you're a person, so it's just finding the person that can complement you in the right way, right? So to me that varies a lot. I'll say for myself, I needed I'm married now, but I needed someone like my wife, someone who's patient, someone who's emotionally mature. She had the master's in psychology, so she taught me a whole lot about the whole emotions thing.
Hmm.
Someone who's very ambitious and willing to go places, right? I don't. My wife likes to work a lot. If she didn't work, I would be happy with it. If she likes to do stuff, I'm happy with. I don't really mind. But so long as she can deal with me always working or always trying to get us to the next place, or like for me, also lastly, someone who's more also on the fun side. Like if we were going to go to Dallas today, for instance, out of the blue yesterday, we decided not to, but like someone who can pick up and go. So it's more of like, hey, what am I compatible with, and then
Hmm.
trying it out, and then seeing what works for you, and just seeking those types of women.
Yeah. No, I really love that word you use, especially compatibility, because like it's not all about like, the physical traits. That's one thing I realized like just getting older, like, it's not all about sexual attraction, how fun they are. And I realized that, for me, I was like an athlete back in the day. Like, I was very attracted to like, physical appearance and things like that. And yeah, I had quite a few relationships. But then as I started to get older in my 20s, and I start to become more focused and more driven, I realized that those things that I looked for in relationships and made relationships work in the past weren't the same things that I truly needed as I developed into a different person as well too. And again, that I believe that's why it's so important to have self-awareness and emotional intelligence to really understand what are the things that you truly need in a partner. Like, do you need them to be someone that is going to be, very supportive? Do you, especially, this is one thing that I realized as an entrepreneur. I used to think that I wanted someone that was as ambitious and as hardworking as I was. Then I was, man, like, no, that doesn't really work out. I do want someone that can, that is more nurturing. I do want someone that is probably going to be more of like a housewife, someone that is going to be able to like care for my children in the future at the end of the day. And I realized this, all through again, understanding who I was and who I was also becoming as well too.
Mhm.
So again, that's why I tie it back to, that self-awareness. It's just so important. And as you're going out there and, dating and experience, being with different people, I think it's so important to be intentional about it. This is a great thing that, people can do, guys or women, as they're trying to find someone that they can build a long-term relationship with. Like maybe look back at some of the qualities that your old partners had and like what really attracted you to them. And then
Mhm.
also look at the qualities that ended that relationship as well too.
Right.
So then you can make sure, hey, this new person that I'm seeking, they do hold a lot of these great qualities, but you also want to look out for those other qualities that led to
Right.
the end of those relationships. And I find that that is so helpful in understanding, who can be that right person for you, down the road. So,
I
man,
totally agree, man. Couldn't agree
awesome.
more.
So as we're wrapping up here, I have a couple final questions that I always like to ask my guests. So I want you to imagine, Louis, that you're at the end of your life. You're able to achieve all the great things that you want to achieve and leave the impact on the world that you truly wanted. And I'm gonna pose it as you're talking to your children, and you're only able to leave them three pieces of advice for them to be able to succeed and prosper. What three pieces of advice would you leave them at that point?
For sure, man. And I'd like to hear what you would leave them too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, man, I love this. So for me, I one thing that I believe is so important is knowing yourself. And that
Yeah.
I believe that in life, it becomes very difficult when you don't understand who you are, why you the way you are, and like why you make certain decisions or have a certain mindset. So I believe it's so important to first understand yourself, because when you understand yourself, you're able to understand others a lot better. and you're also able to better judge how you'll react into different situations and know the areas that you feel weak in and that you would like to grow in. So first, I'd seek to learn to understand yourself. Don't try to change the world, change yourself. Second thing I would say is, you know, approach life as a student and not a follower. I believe that the differences between the two is, as a follower, we tend to, let's say there's someone that we really like, and we tend to ignore all things and just follow every single interaction, they do, all the different biases they have, leave the decisions and values that we want to establish up to them. So we choose to just follow everything they do. And I found that one of the biggest things that have helped me out in life is always being a student. And I define that as, I will learn from many different spaces, but take what I believe aligns to my values and use that to form my own biases. Instead
Yeah.
of following someone blindly, like I choose to learn from them. And, I may even, learn from people where I may not agree with them completely, but there may be some things of value that they do, or may be things of value that they've learned that I can still take from. So for me, it's always being a student, always being, open to learning in life. And then the third thing I would say is understand that you can do everything, but you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So I believe it's so important to know that. I mean, I personally believe that if given you don't have any type of physical or mental handicap or disability, I believe that we all have the ability to truly become whoever we want at the end of the day and develop into any person we ideally, want to be. I don't think that, like where we start out in life is any indicator of where we'll end up at the end of the
That's
day.
right.
And
That's
I
right.
believe it's so important to understand that, you are like our brains have literally evolved to the perfect learning machines. We all have supercomputers inside of
That's
our
right.
heads.
Yes.
Dive into neuroplasticity, all those different things. Like you can learn so many different things. So understand that you can go out there and be anything and never let anyone or yourself give you any type of limitation, because I get, again, at the end of the day, I believe that we can do anything, but also on the other side, that know that you cannot do everything, and you have to make sure that you understand your capacities, have focus in life, and really understand that, again, life is short. So, having focus is one of the most important things. And one of the reasons I think that so many people feel lost is because they lack focus and the ability to, do one thing for enough time in order to become like an expert at it.
Yeah.
And I would, for me, one thing that has led in a lot of things I do is like I seek to become like the best in the world at the things that I do. Like that is like my biggest callings. Like I know that there's so many different opportunities out there, but I'm gonna pick one opportunity and focus on being the best in the world at it. So I can, at the end of the day, deliver the most value. And there's so many other reasons behind why I believe that's extremely important. But again, know that you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So it's so important to pick focuses and, continue to dive into those things in life. So that's right off the top of that. That's the three things. I'd leave that.
You didn't
I
prepare
appreciate
those?
you asking me that question, man. I've never had the opportunity to answer it.
You didn't prepare those?
No,
They're really great, man.
thank
They're
you.
super dope, man. Yeah, man. I guess if it was for me, like let's say it's I'm about to kick the bucket, I'm about to pass, and then I'm with my family, and I got three things to tell them. Honestly speaking, in reality, I probably just make a few jokes and then go. Like if they really, if I were to be serious,
Yeah.
because I'm sure I would have told them this a million times already. They don't want to hear it again. So. I would be like, just think and feel for yourself. Like, just because somebody says something is true, think for yourself. Please think for yourself, because, like you said, we all have supercomputers. Just like you, I believe that even the people that we look at, oh, wow, this person, he's somewhere in the ghetto somewhere. He can't do anything. You put that person under the right circumstances, around the right people, I should say, they could almost do anything, right? So Now, second thing is I would probably say invest in the right people. So
Mm,
just not things. I don't think you should invest. Investing in people has always paid off for me, man. Investing in the right people, and it's a quality to see when someone is a right person. A right person is someone who has a kind heart and is focused on improving themselves and give and also receive. That's the right type of people. And then lastly, try to find inner peace with very little, right? So
mm,
try to be
mm.
at peace and just not happy. Happiness is just is a temporary feeling, like sadness, unless you're depressed, which is a disease. But if you're clinically depressed, but I'm saying if you can find peace with just the fact that you're alive, if you can do that, it doesn't matter what you're going through. You could be going broke, you could be sick, but if you can find gratitude and peace and just the comfort that you're existing right now, I think that's the most beautiful thing because things come and go, and you're like, man, you know. So those are the three things I would tell them probably.
I love it, man. Thank you for sharing, brother. So, as we're wrapping up here, is there anything big coming up, in your world, things that you'd like to promote to our audience, or things that you'd like to share with them?
That's a good question. At this point, just the book is out, so it's on Amazon.com. The Dynamic Man. So probably within the next year or so, I'm probably going to write a follow-up book. But for now, just keep up with me on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. Like I just wrote a book, of course. So I guess I'm an author now. But in my day to day, I'm a software. I do software, so apps, websites. So if you need any help with that, just please just keep up with me on LinkedIn. But if you want to know about, if you want to hear about masculinity, dating, just life in general, please just follow me on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, wherever you get your content.
Awesome, awesome. We'll definitely have some links in the description for you guys to connect with Louis. So, Louis, again, I appreciate you for coming on. This has been an absolutely awesome interview, and I'm looking forward to the next book. If you'd like to hop on the show again, this has been great.
Of course, man. This has been phenomenal. Thanks for the space, man.
Of course. We will see you guys soon on Breaking the Glass Ceiling.